Have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted? Ever watched your reputation get destroyed in minutes while hundreds of strangers judge you? That's exactly what happened to Imani that night. But here's what makes this story extraordinary. The woman destroying her life was her ex-mother-in-law, and the trap had been years in the making. Welcome to Mr. Roman's Story Vault, where we share stories that will move you, inspire you, and sometimes shock you with the depths of human nature. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button because what you're about to hear will leave you speechless. And for my returning viewers, thank you for being part of our family. 6 years before that devastating night at the gala, Imani Redwood stood in the sprawling Los Angeles Convention Center, her laptop bag slung over her shoulder and determination burning in her eyes. The 2018 Tech Innovation Summit buzzed with the energy of 10,000 entrepreneurs, investors, and dreamers. She'd saved for months to afford the ticket, sleeping on her cousin's couch in LA just to be here. Darian Caldwell commanded the main stage, his presence magnetic as he spoke about disrupting traditional wealth models. At 30, he'd already built a tech empire worth billions, yet silver threads wove through his dark hair, evidence of the pressure that came with such success. His tailored suit probably cost more than Imani's annual rent, but it was his words that held her attention. The future belongs to those who dare to challenge the status quo, Darian declared, his voice carrying across the vast auditorium. Wealth without purpose is merely hoarding. True success lies in lifting others as we rise. Imani found herself leaning forward. Here was a billionaire speaking her language, echoing the very principles she'd built her startup around. When the session ended, she navigated through the crowd toward the networking area, her pitch rehearsed and ready. Fate intervened in the form of a spilled coffee. As Imani rounded a corner, a harried assistant bumped into her, sending hot liquid across her blazer. "I'm so sorry," the young man stammered, looking mortified. "It's fine," Imani assured him, though her only professional outfit was now stained. She ducked into the nearest restroom, trying to salvage what she could with paper towels. "That's not coming out," a deep voice observed from behind her. She spun around to find Darian Caldwell himself, holding out an official conference hoodie. "Lost and found always has extras. Can't have you missing the networking lunch looking like you wrestled a coffee machine." Imani's pride warred with practicality. "I can manage. I'm sure you can." His smile was warm, genuine. "But why make things harder than necessary? Besides, the hoodie's actually more Silicon Valley chic than a blazer. You'll fit right in." 20 minutes later, wearing the oversized hoodie, Imani found herself seated across from Darian at a round table, engaged in the most stimulating conversation of her life. He questioned her about her startup, an app designed to connect low-income students with tech mentors, with the intensity of someone who genuinely cared about the answers. "So you're telling me you built the initial platform yourself, while working 2 jobs?" Darian set down his fork, fully focused on her response. 3 jobs, actually." Imani's eyes sparkled with pride. Coding boot camp instructor by day, Uber driver by night, freelance web design on weekends. Sleep is overrated when you're building something that matters. And what makes it matter to you? The question hung between them. Imani studied his face, searching for any sign of condescension or casual curiosity. She found neither, just genuine interest. "Because I was that kid," she said simply. "Southside Chicago, single mom, guidance counselor, who told me coding was too advanced for someone like me. One mentor changed everything. One person who believed I could learn, could build, could become more than my zip code predicted. My platform ensures no kid has to rely on luck to find that person. Darian was quiet for a long moment. Then he raised his water glass. To proving guidance counselors wrong, to building ladders for others to climb, Imani countered, clinking her glass against his. The months following the conference unfolded like a carefully choreographed dance. What began as professional interest evolved into something neither expected. Darian found himself calling Imani late at night, ostensibly to discuss her platform's development, but really just to hear her laugh at his terrible coding jokes. "You know, for a tech billionaire, your Python puns are pathetic," Imani teased during one midnight call, her voice warm through the phone. "Pathetic? I'll have you know my board of directors finds me hilarious." "They're paid to laugh at your jokes, Darian." "Fair point." She could hear his smile. "Good thing I'm calling you for honest feedback then." Their first official date happened almost by accident. Darian was in Chicago for business, and Imani offered to show him the real city, not the polished downtown towers, but the neighborhoods that had shaped her. They ate at her favorite soul food restaurant, where the owner, Miss Patricia, embarrassed Imani by gushing about her achievements. "This girl right here," Miss Patricia announced to the entire restaurant, "used to do her homework in that corner booth every day. Now look at her, building apps, changing lives. We're proud of you, baby." Darian watched Imani's face flush with embarrassment and affection. In his world, people rarely showed such open emotion or community pride. He found it intoxicating. "She seems to think you're pretty special," he observed as they walked along Lake Michigan afterward. "Ms. Patricia has known me since I was 12. She's biased. Maybe..." Darian stopped walking, turning to face her. "Or maybe she sees what I'm starting to see." Their first kiss happened 3 weeks later in San Francisco. Imani had flown out to present her platform to potential investors, and Darian insisted on being there for support. When the lead investor offered not just funding, but a partnership that would scale her platform nationally, Imani had burst out of the conference room, eyes bright with tears of joy. Without thinking, she'd thrown her arms around Darian. He'd caught her, spinning her around in the marble lobby, while other professionals pretended not to stare. When he set her down, their faces were inches apart. "You did it," he whispered. "We did it," she corrected. "Your advice made all the difference." "Imani." He cupped her face gently. "My advice didn't build that platform. Your brilliance did. Your determination did. Your heart did." The kiss was soft, tentative at first, then deeper as they realized this was what they'd been dancing around for months. When they finally pulled apart, Imani's eyes were wide. "This complicates things," she said softly. "The best things usually do." By summer, they were inseparable. Darian introduced Imani to experiences she'd only dreamed of: helicopter rides over the Grand Canyon, private concerts, charity galas where her dress cost more than her monthly salary. But it was the quiet moments that built their foundation. Sunday mornings coding together on his couch, teaching him to make her grandmother's mac and cheese recipe. Long walks where they debated everything from artificial intelligence ethics to whether pineapple belonged on pizza. The Santa Monica Pier held special significance. It was where Imani had taken Darian to ride the Ferris wheel, after he'd confessed he'd never been to an amusement park. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold when their car paused at the top. "I need to tell you something," Darian said, his usual confidence replaced by vulnerability. Imani's heart stuttered. "If you're about to tell me you're secretly married or a serial killer, I'm jumping." "What?" "No." He laughed, then grew serious again. I love you. The words hung in the salt-tinged air. Below them, the world continued spinning. Couples strolling the boardwalk, children shrieking on rides, waves crashing against the shore. But in their small car, time stopped. I know we're from different worlds, he continued. I know it's only been 6 months. I know there are 1,000 reasons why this shouldn't work. But Imani, you've changed everything. The way I see success, purpose, life itself. I love your mind, your spirit, your terrible taste in reality TV shows. Hey, The Bachelor is a cultural phenomenon, and I can't imagine my life without you in it. Imani's eyes filled with tears. You beautiful, complicated man. She took his hands. I love you too. Despite your inability to properly season food and your weird obsession with productivity apps, those apps are revolutionary. They're unnecessary when you have a basic calendar, but I love you anyway. He kissed her as the Ferris wheel began its descent, and for those perfect moments, their different worlds merged into one. If you're enjoying this story of love conquering all boundaries, remember to hit that like button. Sometimes the heart wants what it wants, regardless of bank accounts or backgrounds. The invitation arrived on expensive stationery, Cecilia Caldwell's handwriting as precise as her reputation. Darling, she'd written to her son. I insist you bring this Imani I've been hearing about to dinner. It's time I met the woman who's captured so much of your attention. Imani stood before the mirror in Darian's penthouse, smoothing her navy dress for the 10th time. Maybe I should wear the black one instead. You look perfect. Darian wrapped his arms around her from behind. Stop worrying. Easy for you to say. You're not meeting your girlfriend's mother for the first time. My mother will love you. He pressed a kiss to her temple. How could she not? The Caldwell estate sprawled across 40 acres in Marin County, all manicured gardens and old money elegance. As their car wound up the private drive, Imani's stomach churned. She'd faced down hostile investors and skeptical professors, but somehow this felt more daunting. Cecilia Caldwell stood in the doorway like a queen surveying her domain. 62 years old, she wore her age like armor, silver hair swept into an elegant chignon, diamonds glittering at her throat, posture that spoke of finishing schools and generations of privilege. Mother. Darian kissed her cheek. This is Imani, Miss Redwood. Cecilia's handshake was brief, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. How interesting to finally meet you. The word interesting carried weight, like a stone dropped into still water. Imani felt the ripples immediately but kept her smile steady. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Caldwell. Your home is beautiful. It's been in the family for 4 generations. Cecilia's gaze swept over Imani's dress, her shoes, cataloguing and dismissing. Darian tells me you're from Chicago? Yes, the South Side. How urban. And your parents? My mother raised me alone. She passed 5 years ago. I see. 2 words that conveyed volumes. Well, shall we go in? Cook has prepared salmon. The dining room could have hosted a state dinner. 3-place settings looked lonely at a table built for 20. Cecilia dominated the conversation, asking questions that felt more like an interrogation. What schools did you attend? Chicago State for undergrad, DePaul for my master's. Not Ivy League, then. And you work in technology? I've developed a mentorship platform for underserved students interested in STEM careers. A charity project. How noble. Cecilia sipped her wine. Though I suppose someone has to help those people. Mother. Darian's voice carried a warning. What? I'm simply getting to know your friend. She turned back to Imani. Tell me, dear, is Darian your first relationship with someone of his stature? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Imani set down her fork carefully. If you're asking whether I've dated billionaires before, no, but I've found that bank accounts make poor life partners. Character matters more. How refreshingly idealistic. Cecilia's laugh was crystalline, sharp, though idealism doesn't pay for private schools or maintain estates, does it? Neither does cruelty, but it seems well funded here. Silence descended. Darian's hand found Imani's under the table, squeezing gently. Cecilia's eyes narrowed. I beg your pardon? I said cruelty doesn't pay bills either. Imani met her gaze steadily. Mrs. Caldwell, I understand your concern. Your son is exceptional and you want to protect him. But I'm not here for his money or connections. I'm here because I love him. Because he makes me laugh, challenges my thinking, and sees the world as it could be, not just as it is. If that's not enough for you, I'm sorry, but it's everything to me. Cecilia's face remained marble smooth. Love, how sweet. Tell me, Miss Redwood, what do you imagine your future looks like? Surely you understand the responsibilities that come with being connected to the Caldwell name, the social obligations, the charitable foundations, the proper circles one must maintain. I imagine a future where Darian and I build something meaningful together, Imani replied. Where success is measured by impact, not income brackets. Where proper circles include anyone working to make the world better. How wonderfully naive. Cecilia turned to her son. Darling, you can't seriously think. I think Imani is the best thing that's ever happened to me. Darian's voice was steel. I think she's brilliant, compassionate, and exactly the kind of person our family needs more of. And I think this dinner is over. He stood, helping Imani to her feet. We'll see ourselves out. As they walked to the car, Imani's hands shook slightly. Well, that went well. I'm sorry. Darian pulled her close. I had no idea she'd be like that. Yes, you did. Imani looked up at him. You hoped she'd be different, but you knew. It's okay, Darian. I knew what I was signing up for when I fell in love with you. You shouldn't have to sign up for that. Ever. Maybe not. But here's what your mother doesn't understand. I've faced worse than her disapproval and survived. I've been underestimated my whole life. One more person adding to that list doesn't change who I am or how I feel about you. He kissed her there in the driveway, under the disapproving windows of his childhood home. You're incredible. I'm also hungry. Your mother's salmon was terrible. It really was. Let's find a burger place. As they drove away, neither saw Cecilia watching from an upstairs window, her expression unreadable. The battle lines had been drawn, though neither Imani nor Darian realized how far Cecilia would go to win the war she'd just declared. It started with lunches. Darling, we simply must discuss the Foundation's new initiatives, Cecilia would insist, scheduling meetings that somehow always conflicted with Darian and Imani's plans. When Darian apologized for cancelling another date night, Imani understood. The Foundation helped thousands. How could she complain? Then came the charity events. Cecilia began inviting Darian to gatherings where +1s weren't welcome, or where the dress code was so specific that Imani, still building her company, couldn't afford the appropriate attire. I'm sure she understands, Cecilia would say smoothly. These old-fashioned donors can be so particular about their guest lists. The whispers started next. At a tech conference in Seattle, a potential investor pulled Imani aside. I heard through the grapevine that your platform might have some regulatory issues, he mentioned casually. Something about improper data handling? That's completely false, Imani responded, alarmed. We've passed every audit. Oh, I'm sure it's nothing. You know how rumors spread. Probably just competitors talking. But the seed was planted. When Imani traced the rumor back, it led to a social club where Cecilia held court every Wednesday. Coincidence seemed unlikely. The masterpiece of Cecilia's campaign came disguised as concern. She arrived at Darian's office one afternoon, her face creased with worry. "Darling, I need to speak with you about something delicate." Darian looked up from his monitors, immediately alert. "What's wrong?" "It's about Imani's company." Cecilia settled into the leather chair across from his desk. "I had lunch with Margaret Zhao yesterday. You remember? From the Zhao Foundation. She mentioned they'd considered funding Imani's platform, but found some troubling discrepancies in her financial projections." "What kind of discrepancies?" "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing serious. Perhaps just aggressive optimism in her numbers. You know how eager young entrepreneurs can be. But darling, if she's misrepresenting figures to investors, she wouldn't do that." Darian's response was immediate, firm. "Of course not intentionally. But pressure can make people do unexpected things. I just worry about your reputation if something were to surface. The Caldwell name carries weight, and any scandal—" "There won't be a scandal because there's nothing to find." He turned back to his screens. "Imani is the most ethical person I know." Cecilia stood, smoothing her skirt. "I hope you're right. I truly do. I'd hate to see you hurt again." The reference to his ex-fiancée, who had indeed used him for his connections, wasn't subtle. But subtlety had never been Cecilia's strong suit when she felt her position threatened. These small moments accumulated like sediment in a river, invisible until they changed the current's flow. Darian found himself occasionally wondering about things that had never bothered him before. Why did Imani work such long hours? Who was that mentor she mentioned meeting for coffee? When she showed him her platform's expansion plans, he caught himself scrutinizing the numbers more carefully than before. The charity project that finally cracked their foundation was supposed to bring them closer together. Imani had proposed partnering her platform with the Caldwell Foundation to create a comprehensive STEM program for underserved communities. The initiative would combine her technology with his resources to reach thousands of students. "This could change everything," Imani explained excitedly over dinner, her tablet displaying colorful projections. "We're not just offering mentorship anymore. We're creating an entire ecosystem of support." "The board will need convincing," Darian said carefully. "The budget is significant. Since when do you care what the board thinks? You usually just tell them what we're doing. This is different. It's a major allocation of resources." Imani set down her tablet. "Is this about the resources, or is this about me?" "What?" "Of course not. Because lately it feels like you're questioning everything I do. Last week you asked to review my investor presentations. Yesterday you wanted to see our user data analytics. Now you're worried about the board's opinion on a project that aligns perfectly with the foundation's mission. I'm just being thorough. No, you're being suspicious. And I want to know why." The conversation deteriorated from there. Accusations flew, Imani feeling micromanaged and distrusted, Darian defensive about what he saw as due diligence. Neither recognized Cecilia's invisible hand guiding their conflict. The storm that finally broke them arrived on a Thursday night in November. Rain lashed against the windows of their shared apartment as Imani entered, exhausted from a 16-hour day. She found Darian in his study, surrounded by financial documents. "What's all this?" she asked, recognizing her company's logo on several papers. The foundation's legal team flagged some concerns about the partnership. His voice was carefully neutral. "There are questions about your platform's valuation methods." "Questions from who?" "Let me guess, your mother's friends on the board?" This isn't about my mother. Everything is about your mother." The words exploded from her. "Every doubt you've had, every question you've raised, every time you've pulled back, it all started after she decided I wasn't good enough for her precious son. That's not fair. I've defended you to her constantly. Have you? Or have you been listening to her poison and telling yourself you're just being careful?" Darian stood, frustration evident in every line of his body. "Maybe I am being careful. Maybe I should be. You want me to risk the Foundation's reputation on a project that what? That helps kids who look like me. Is that the real problem here? Don't you dare make this about race. Then what is it about? Because the Darian I fell in love with would have funded this project without blinking. He would have trusted my numbers because he trusts me. So what changed?" Thunder crashed overhead, matching the storm between them. They stood on opposite sides of his desk, the distance feeling like miles. "Maybe I'm just seeing things more clearly," Darian said quietly. The words hung between them like a blade. Imani's face crumpled, then hardened. "You're right. You are seeing clearly. You're seeing me the way your mother always has, as someone who doesn't belong in your world. Someone who must be after your money or connections, because what else could I possibly offer? Imani, that's not—" "I'm done." She turned toward the door. "I'm done defending myself to you. I'm done proving my worth. I'm done fighting for someone who won't fight for me." "Where are you going?" "Tamsin's. I'll get my things this weekend." The door closed with a finality that echoed through the apartment. Darian sank into his chair, the papers before him blurring. He'd won the argument and lost everything that mattered. They didn't speak for 3 months. Pride and pain built walls that neither could scale. Imani threw herself into her work, channeling heartbreak into determination. Darian buried himself in Foundation business, telling himself he'd made the logical choice. The divorce papers arrived on a Tuesday. Imani opened them at her desk, her hands steady even as her heart shattered. The language was cold. Clinical irreconcilable differences reducing their love to legal terminology. She signed where indicated, placed the documents in the return envelope, and removed her wedding ring. The platinum band caught the light, its inner inscription visible, different worlds, one heart. She'd chosen those words, believing love could bridge any gap. Now they felt like mockery. That night, Tamsin held her as she cried, years of strength finally crumbling. How could he just give up? Imani sobbed. How could he let her win? Because sometimes people choose the familiar over the right, Tamsin said softly. His mother's approval is all he's ever known. Your love required him to be brave. I would have been brave for him. I know, honey. That's the difference between you. Could you forgive someone who broke your heart based on lies? Someone who chose suspicion over trust, family prejudice over personal truth? As Imani rebuilt her life piece by piece, this question haunted her quiet moments. Chicago welcomed Imani back like a prodigal daughter. She rented a small apartment in Hyde Park, close to the university where she'd begun teaching part-time. Her platform, freed from the complications of Caldwell Foundation politics, flourished under her sole direction. Within 6 months, she'd secured funding from 3 major tech companies interested in diversifying their talent pipeline. Her mentorship program expanded to 12 cities, connecting thousands of students with industry professionals. The girl from the South Side who'd been told coding was too advanced for her was now changing the trajectory of countless young lives. You're glowing, Miss Patricia observed during one of Imani's visits to the old neighborhood. Success looks good on you, baby. It's not about success, Imani replied, watching through the window as teenagers entered the new coding center she'd helped establish. It's about purpose. I lost myself for a while, trying to fit into someone else's world. Now I'm building my own." The media took notice. TechCrunch ran a feature on her platform's innovative approach. Forbes included her in their 30 under 30 list. Speaking invitations poured in. At every event, Imani shared her story. Not the painful details of her marriage, but the broader message of perseverance and self-belief. Meanwhile, in San Francisco, Darian Caldwell discovered that success felt hollow when achieved alone. The foundation ran smoothly, profits soared, and his mother approved of the conservative approach he'd taken since Imani left. But something vital was missing. He'd catch himself reaching for his phone to share good news with Imani, only to remember she wasn't there. He'd pass by their favorite restaurant and feel physical pain at the memory of her laugh. Worst were the nights when he'd review the partnership proposal she'd created, realizing too late that every projection had been conservative, every number defensible. "You're miserable," his friend Marcus observed over drinks. "When are you going to admit you made a mistake?" "It wasn't a mistake, we wanted different things." "No, you wanted the same things. You just let your mother convince you otherwise." Darian's glass paused halfway to his lips. "That's not what happened." "Isn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, you had a brilliant woman who loved you, and you threw her away because Mummy didn't approve." The truth stung worse than the whiskey. Cecilia, for her part, reveled in her victory. Her son was back on the proper path, attending the right events with the right people. She'd even introduced him to several suitable women, daughters of fellow board members, heiresses with the appropriate pedigree. But her satisfaction curdled when Imani's success became impossible to ignore. The Chicago Tribune ran a glowing profile. The platform won a prestigious Innovation Award. Most galling was the photo of Imani at the White House, invited to speak about education technology initiatives. "She's certainly persistent," Cecilia commented to her friend Margaret, scrolling through the article on her phone. "She's remarkable," Margaret corrected. "My granddaughter is in her program, says it changed her life." Cecilia's smile tightened. How wonderful, but it wasn't wonderful. It was infuriating. Imani was supposed to fade away, to prove Cecilia right about gold diggers and social climbers. Instead, she was thriving, succeeding, making Cecilia's prejudices look petty and small. The idea came to her slowly, nurtured by wounded pride and growing resentment. If Imani wouldn't disappear gracefully, perhaps she needed help understanding her place. The Caldwell Foundation's annual gala was coming up, the social event of the season, attended by everyone who mattered. What if Imani received an invitation? A gesture of reconciliation, woman to woman. And what if, at that gala, certain information came to light? Information that would finally expose Imani for what she really was, or at least what Cecilia needed everyone to believe she was. Cecilia made a call to an old contact, someone who specialized in digital manipulation. "I need something convincing," she explained. "Security footage, financial records, nothing too obvious, just enough to raise questions." "That's a dangerous game, Mrs. Caldwell. I'm not paying you for moral guidance. Can you do it? For the right price, anything's possible." As she hung up, Cecilia felt a thrill of anticipation. Imani Redwood thought she'd won by walking away, by building her little success story, but Cecilia Caldwell had spent 60 years learning how to protect what was hers. One way or another, she would prove that Imani didn't belong in their world. She began drafting the invitation, her handwriting elegant as ever. "My dear Imani," she wrote, "I believe it's time we put the past behind us." Cecilia Caldwell's home office was immaculate, each pen aligned, each paper precisely stacked. Control was her religion, and this sanctuary her temple. On her computer screen, a man with thinning hair and unremarkable features presented his work via secure video call. "As you requested, Mrs. Caldwell," he said, clicking through images. Security footage from the Foundation offices, digitally altered to include Ms. Redwood. The screen displayed Imani, or a convincing facsimile, hunched over a filing cabinet, stuffing documents into her bag. Another showed her at an office safe, hands moving suspiciously. "The timestamp?" Cecilia asked. "Last month. We've created a fictional trail suggesting she used her old building access code, which someone forgot to deactivate after the divorce." Cecilia nodded appreciatively. "And the financial records? Small discrepancies in donation allocations over the past year. Nothing dramatic, we don't want it obvious, but enough that when combined with the footage, it creates a pattern of misconduct." "Perfect." She transferred the agreed sum to his offshore account. "I trust this conversation never happened." "What conversation, Mrs. Caldwell?" The man smiled thinly before disconnecting. Alone, Cecilia opened her desk drawer and withdrew cream-colored stationery embossed with the Caldwell crest. Her fountain pen scratched softly as she composed the invitation. "Oh, my dear Imani, so time has a way of revealing what truly matters. While our past interactions have been challenging, I find myself reflecting on the bright young woman who brought such passion to my son's life. And the Caldwell Foundation annual gala occurs next month, and I would be honored if you would attend as my personal guest. Darian will be receiving recognition for his humanitarian work, and I know your presence would mean the world to him, though his pride may prevent him from admitting as much. Perhaps this can be a first step toward healing old wounds. With sincere regards, and Cecilia Caldwell." She sealed the envelope with satisfaction. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. Imani would accept. Her pride and lingering feelings for Darian would ensure that. She'd arrive hopeful, perhaps even grateful for the olive branch extended. And then, before 500 of society's most influential figures, Cecilia would destroy her. 1 week later, in her Chicago apartment, Imani stared at the invitation, turning it over in her hands. Tamsin watched her skeptically from the couch. "You can't seriously be considering this," Tamsin said. "That woman hates you." "She never respected me," Imani corrected. "There's a difference. Not when the result is the same. This reeks of trouble." Imani sighed, setting the invitation on her coffee table. "Maybe. Or maybe she's genuine. People change, Tamsin. Leopards don't change their spots, especially not wealthy, prejudiced leopards." Despite her friend's warnings, the invitation nagged at Imani. Perhaps Cecilia had recognized her accomplishments. Perhaps time had softened her judgment. Perhaps, though she barely admitted this to herself, it meant Darian still thought of her. 3 days later, she mailed her response. She would attend. In San Francisco, Cecilia received Imani's acceptance with a smile that would have chilled blood. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. She made a call to the event coordinator, ensure the main screen is visible from every angle, and double-check the security team's availability. We may have an incident requiring their attention. As the gala approached, Cecilia orchestrated every detail. The seating chart placed Imani at a prominent table, visible to all. The slideshow presentation was programmed to transition from Darian's achievements directly to the evidence against Imani. Security guards were briefed on a potential situation requiring discretion. Darian remained completely unaware. Cecilia mentioned to him that several former associates would attend, but specifically avoided naming Imani. His mother's sudden interest in reconciliation might have raised suspicions had he not been so consumed with the Foundation's latest projects. The night before the gala, Cecilia visited her son's office. "Everything's prepared for tomorrow," she assured him. "You'll make us all proud." "Thanks, Mom." He looked up from his computer, dark circles under his eyes. "I appreciate everything you've done. I only want what's best for you, darling. I always have." For once, she wasn't lying. In her mind, exposing Imani was protecting her son. The fact that it would satisfy her own prejudice was merely a bonus. The Caldwell Foundation annual gala transformed the San Francisco Art Museum into a wonderland of light and luxury. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light across marble floors. Ice sculptures shaped like global landmarks represented the Foundation's international reach. A string quartet played subtly in one corner, while waiters circulated with champagne flutes on silver trays. Imani arrived precisely 30 minutes after the event began, not so early as to appear eager, not so late as to seem rude. Her gown, a deep emerald that complemented her skin, drew appreciative glances. She'd splurged on the dress, telling herself it was professional investment rather than vanity. Looking confident and successful was its own form of armor. She accepted a champagne flute, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. Across the room, Cecilia held court among board members, resplendent in black lace and diamonds. Their eyes met briefly. Cecilia raised her glass in acknowledgement before returning to her conversation. Imani released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. So far, civility prevailed. Maybe Tamsin's concerns were unfounded. "Imani, is that you?" She turned to find Marcus, Darian's oldest friend, looking pleasantly surprised. "Marcus, it's been too long." "Years. You look amazing. Are you here with someone?" "Actually, Cecilia invited me." "Shocking, I know." Marcus's eyebrows rose. "Cecilia? That's unexpected. She mentioned wanting to heal old wounds. People change, right?" "Some do." His expression remained doubtful. "Have you seen Darian yet?" Before she could finish, the lights dimmed slightly. A spotlight illuminated the stage where Cecilia approached the microphone, elegant and commanding. "Good evening, distinguished guests and friends," she began. "Tonight we celebrate the extraordinary achievements of the Caldwell Foundation under my son's leadership." Imani found her assigned table, settling into her chair as Cecilia continued. The program began with a video montage of the Foundation's global initiatives. Darian appeared on screen, visiting schools in Africa, hospitals in Southeast Asia, community centers in Appalachia. Imani's chest tightened. His compassion had been what first attracted her. That, at least, hadn't changed. When the video ended, applause filled the room. Darian himself took the stage, handsome in his tuxedo, though slightly thinner than Imani remembered. He spoke passionately about their mission, his voice still causing a flutter in her stomach, despite everything. "Success without purpose is empty," he said, echoing words he'd spoken years ago at the conference where they'd met. "True wealth lies in what we build together." Imani sipped her champagne, allowing herself a moment of melancholy. What might they have built together had things been different? As Darian concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, Cecilia returned to the stage. Something in her expression, a gleam of anticipation, a slight quirk of her lips, sent a warning chill down Imani's spine. "Before we present this year's humanitarian award," Cecilia said, her voice adopting a somber tone, "there is a serious matter requiring immediate attention." The room quieted. Darian, still standing nearby, looked confused. The Caldwell Foundation values integrity above all, Cecilia continued. When we discover breaches of that integrity, we must address them transparently, regardless of personal connections. The main screen behind her changed. Suddenly, there was Imani, or someone who looked remarkably like her, at the Foundation offices, rifling through files, counting cash, accessing a safe. Recent security audits have uncovered disturbing evidence, Cecilia announced. We have reason to believe that Imani Redwood, formerly connected to this foundation through marriage to my son, has been accessing our offices unauthorized and misappropriating funds. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. 500 pairs of eyes focused on Imani, who sat frozen, champagne glass suspended halfway to her lips. The evidence suggests a pattern of behavior dating back months, Cecilia continued as more images appeared on screen. Financial discrepancies corresponding with these unauthorized visits exceed $200,000. The champagne glass slipped from Imani's fingers, shattering on the marble floor. The sound seemed to echo through the suddenly silent room. "This is a lie," she said, rising to her feet. Her voice, though shaking, carried. "I haven't been to the Foundation offices since before the divorce. This is fabricated." Cecilia's expression was a masterpiece of false concern. "I understand denial is natural in these situations. However, the evidence is quite clear. Security, please escort Ms. Redwood from the premises. The authorities have been notified." 2 suited men appeared at the edges of the crowd, moving toward Imani. Murmurs rippled through the assembly, some sympathetic, others judgmental. She always seemed so earnest. These nouveau riche types often have hidden agendas. Poor Darian, betrayed again. Darian stepped forward, his face a mask of confusion. "Mother, what is this? Why wasn't I informed? I wanted to spare you the pain, darling. I know how her betrayal hurt you before." Imani's hands trembled with the mixture of humiliation and rage. The careful image she'd constructed, successful entrepreneur, respected educator, was crumbling before hundreds of witnesses. Camera phones recorded her distress. Tomorrow, her humiliation would be complete, spread across social media, her reputation in tatters. If you've ever been falsely accused, you know the helpless rage Imani felt in that moment. The truth becomes irrelevant when the lie is crafted well enough. Like this video, if you believe the truth, always finds a way, even when all seems lost. "I did nothing wrong," Imani said, her voice stronger now as she addressed the room. "Someone has created false evidence. I am not a thief." Cecilia sighed dramatically. "The courts will determine that, my dear. For now, I think it's best if you leave quietly." The security guards reached her table. One placed a firm hand on her elbow. "Mum, please come with us." Darian pushed through the crowd. "Wait, I need to understand what's happening." But Imani had endured enough. With a sharp movement, she freed herself from the guard's grip. "Don't touch me. I can find the exit myself." Head high, tears threatening but contained, she walked toward the door. The crowd parted before her like the Red Sea. Some averted their eyes in second-hand embarrassment. Others stared openly, drinking in the spectacle. As she passed Cecilia, their eyes locked. In that brief moment, Imani saw it all. The satisfaction, the vindication, the absolute certainty that she had won. "I know what you did," Imani whispered, too quietly for others to hear. "And so do you." Something flickered across Cecilia's perfect facade, a momentary crack in her composure. But then it was gone, replaced by practiced sympathy as she turned back to the crowd. "Let's continue with our evening," Cecilia announced. "The Foundation's work is too important to be overshadowed by such unfortunate incidents." The night air hit Imani like a physical force as she burst through the museum's doors. Her chest heaved with suppressed sobs. Not here, not where they might see. She forced her legs to carry her across the courtyard, past the valets, around the corner to a small garden area where museum patrons rarely ventured. There, hidden among sculpted hedges, she finally allowed herself to break. Her knees hit the gravel path. A sound emerged from her throat, half scream, half sob. 6 years of building herself back up after the divorce, destroyed in minutes. Her phone buzzed continuously, no doubt journalists who'd been at the gala, seeking comments on her crime. How perfectly Cecilia had orchestrated it. The invitation hadn't been reconciliation but execution, and Imani had walked willingly to the gallows, her own pride and lingering feelings for Darian blinding her to the obvious trap. Her phone rang again, Tamsin's name on the screen. Imani answered with trembling fingers. "Imani, what's happening?" "I just got a text from someone saying you were escorted out of the gala." "She set me up," Imani whispered. "Cecilia accused me of stealing from the Foundation. In front of everyone. There were doctored security videos. Oh my God." Tamsin's voice hardened with protective fury. "Where are you now?" "Outside. In the museum garden. Stay there. I'm in San Francisco for that conference, remember? I'm calling an Uber right now. 20 minutes tops." The promise of her friend's arrival provided a lifeline. Imani wiped her eyes, smearing expensive makeup across her cheeks. "What am I going to do, Tamsin?" "My reputation, my work." "We fight back," Tamsin said firmly. "We prove the evidence is fake. We expose Cecilia for the manipulative witch she is." "How? She's Cecilia Caldwell. She has resources, connections. And you have truth. Plus a best friend who majored in computer science and knows exactly how to analyze doctored footage." Tamsin's voice softened. "We'll fix this, I promise. This isn't over." As she ended the call, Imani looked up at the stars barely visible through San Francisco's light pollution. The same stars shone over Chicago, over the south side where she'd grown up fighting longer odds than this. She'd survived poverty, prejudice, and heartbreak. She would survive Cecilia Caldwell too. Rising to her feet, Imani straightened her gown and wiped away the last of her tears. This wasn't the end of her story. It was merely the beginning of a new chapter, one where truth would prevail and justice would find its way even through the darkest night. Cecilia had thrown down the gauntlet. Now Imani would show her exactly what happened when you underestimated a woman who had spent her entire life proving people wrong. Morning light streamed through the windows of Tamsin's hotel suite, illuminating scattered papers and laptops. Imani sat cross-legged on the couch, still wearing yesterday's makeup, hair pulled into a messy bun. Her eyes were red, but focused as she explained her situation to the woman on the video call. "So that's everything," Imani concluded. "I need someone who isn't afraid to go up against the Caldwell name." Nora Chen, a formidable attorney known for taking on powerful interests, studied Imani through the screen. The evidence they presented, have you seen it in detail? Only what was displayed at the gala. But it's completely fabricated. I haven't been near those offices in years. Manipulation leaves traces, Tamsin interjected, looking up from her laptop. Digital forensics can prove tampering, assuming we can get access to the original files, Nora pointed out. The Caldwells won't exactly hand them over willingly. I know someone in their IT department, Imani said. Marcus attended the gala. He texted me this morning. He doesn't believe the accusations. Nora made notes. Good. We'll need allies. What's your immediate concern? My reputation. The foundation hasn't filed criminal charges yet, but the story's everywhere. My non-profit partners are already getting nervous. As if on cue, Imani's phone chimed with another news alert. The headline made her wince. Tech entrepreneur accused of embezzlement at Caldwell Gala. We move fast, Nora decided. First, a carefully worded statement denying the allegations and announcing your intention to clear your name. Second, we file for defamation. Third, we demand forensic analysis of the evidence. Can we win against someone like Cecilia Caldwell? Truth doesn't care about bank accounts, Nora replied simply. But we'll need more than just your word. Imani's phone buzzed again, this time with something unexpected. A message from one of her former students, now a social media manager. We believe in you. Hashtag Istan with Imani trending in Chicago. How can we help? She showed the screen to Tamsin and Nora. Hundreds of posts from students she'd mentored, colleagues, even strangers who'd followed her work. The community she'd built was rallying around her. That's your power, Nora said. The Caldwells have money and influence, but you have people who know your character. By afternoon, the counter-offensive was launched. Imani recorded a brief, dignified statement. No tears, no rage, just calm assertion of her innocence and determination to prove it. Nora filed initial paperwork for a defamation suit. Tamsin connected with digital forensics experts. As evening fell, Imani received another message, this one from Darian. We need to talk. This isn't right. She stared at the screen, heart pounding. After everything, could he finally be seeing the truth? Darian hadn't slept since the gala. Questions plagued him like persistent ghosts. Why hadn't his mother consulted him before making such serious accusations? Why did the security footage look slightly off? Why had Imani's expression been one of genuine shock rather than guilt? The foundation offices were quiet at 2 a.m. as he accessed his mother's computer. As board chair, she'd insisted on keeping certain security matters contained, a red flag he'd overlooked. Her password was predictable, his birthday followed by his father's initials. The files weren't difficult to find. A folder labeled Security Review contained everything. The original footage, the manipulated versions, invoices from a digital manipulation specialist, even emails discussing the fabrication process. One message made his stomach turn. Mrs. Caldwell, when the alterations are complete. At normal viewing speed, the insertion of subject's face is undetectable. The timestamps have been adjusted as requested. I've also created the financial discrepancy reports that correspond with the dates. And as discussed, this level of work falls outside normal parameters. The additional fee reflects the risk involved. Awaiting final payment. JLN. Darian downloaded everything to a secure drive. His hands shook with rage and disbelief. For years he defended his mother, excused her behavior as protective rather than controlling. He'd allowed her suspicions to poison his marriage. Now, confronted with evidence of her deliberate cruelty, he could no longer deny what Imani had seen all along. Dawn was breaking when he reached his mother's home. The housekeeper answered his insistent knocking, startled by his disheveled appearance. "Mr. Darian, is everything—" "Where is she?" "In the solarium, but—" He strode past her, through the grand foyer and into the glass-enclosed garden room where Cecilia took her morning tea. She looked up, smiling. "Darling, what a pleasant surprise. Though you look terrible. Didn't you sleep? How could you?" He placed the drive on the table between them. "I found everything, Mother. The original footage, the emails, the payments." Color drained from Cecilia's face. "You accessed my private files. You destroyed an innocent woman's reputation. You fabricated evidence. You committed fraud. I protected you." Her voice hardened. "That woman was never right for you. She would have eventually hurt you, used your name for her advantage. The only person who used the Caldwell name improperly was you." Darian's voice shook. "You manipulated me for years, made me doubt the best thing in my life. And when that wasn't enough, you orchestrated a public humiliation to destroy her. Everything I've done has been for your sake. No, it was for yours, for your prejudices, your narrow vision of what our family should be." Cecilia's hand trembled as she set down her teacup. "What do you intend to do?" "I'm going to fix what you broke. I'm clearing Imani's name. I'm telling the truth. You would betray your own mother, damage our family's reputation. You damaged it the moment you chose hate over humanity." For the first time in his memory, Darian saw his mother's perfect composure crumble. Behind the armor of wealth and status was simply a woman who'd allowed fear to corrupt her heart. "She'll never forgive you," he said, softer now, "but she deserves the chance to try." Imani arrived at the Caldwell estate with shoulders squared and head high. The drive from the hotel had given her time to prepare, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. Whatever happened the next hour would determine not just her reputation, but the person she chose to be moving forward. Darian met her at the door, his eyes conveying 1,000 apologies. "Thank you for coming. I'm not here for you," she said quietly. "I'm here to look your mother in the eye when she admits what she did." He nodded, leading her through the house to the same dining room where they'd had that disastrous first dinner years ago. Cecilia sat at the table, perfectly coiffed as always, though something about her seemed diminished. "Mrs. Caldwell." Imani remained standing, unwilling to cede even symbolic ground. "Miss Redwood." Cecilia's voice lacked its usual imperial tone. "My son tells me you're aware of certain actions I took." "You mean how you fabricated evidence to frame me for theft, how you deliberately destroyed my reputation in front of hundreds of people, how you invited me to that gala specifically to humiliate me?" "Yes." The single word seemed to cost Cecilia physical effort. Those actions, why? After all this time, what could you possibly gain? Cecilia's gaze dropped to her folded hands. "I saw you succeeding, being praised, your work gaining recognition. It felt wrong that a black woman from the South Side could achieve something meaningful without your son's name attached. Wrong that you moved forward while Darian seemed stuck in the past." Cecilia looked up. "He was never the same after you left, after I left." Imani laughed incredulously. "You manipulated him into pushing me away. You planted doubts that destroyed our marriage. I thought I was protecting him. You were protecting yourself, your worldview, your comfort." The room fell silent. Darian stood near the window, witnessing but not intervening. This confrontation wasn't about him. It was about two women finally speaking truths long buried. Cecilia rose slowly. "I've prepared a statement admitting the fabrication. Darian has the original files proving the manipulation. The Foundation's legal team will issue a public apology and financial compensation for damages to your reputation. You think money fixes this? No." For the first time, genuine emotion cracked Cecilia's voice. "Nothing fixes this. What I did was unforgivable." Imani studied the woman before her, still proud, still privileged, but finally seeing the consequences of her actions. In that moment, Imani made a choice that surprised even herself. "I forgive you." Cecilia's head snapped up. "What? Not for your sake. For mine. Hatred is a poison I refuse to carry. Imani's voice remained steady. You'll never understand what it's like to be judged before you speak, to work twice as hard for half the recognition, to have doors closed because of how you look. But I don't need you to understand. I just need you to acknowledge the harm you've caused. Tears, perhaps the first genuine ones in decades, filled Cecilia's eyes. I am deeply sorry. What would you have done in Imani's place? Could you find the strength to forgive someone who tried to destroy everything you built? Sometimes the greatest power lies not in revenge, but in refusing to let another person's hatred define your path. Your apology is accepted, Imani said quietly. But this isn't the end. It's the beginning of making things right. The press conference took place on a bright Monday morning at the Caldwell Foundation headquarters. Camera flashes illuminated the stage where Darian stood at the podium, his expression grave yet determined. Beside him sat Nora Chen, Imani's attorney, and behind them, a surprise to the assembled journalists, Cecilia Caldwell herself. I've called this meeting to correct a grave injustice, Darian began, his voice steady. 3 days ago, accusations were made against Imani Redwood at our annual gala. Those accusations were false. The evidence presented was fabricated. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked rapidly. The Caldwell Foundation acknowledges full responsibility for this error and the harm it has caused. We have provided Ms. Redwood's legal team with all original files proving the manipulation. A complete retraction will be published in all major outlets. A reporter raised her hand. Mr. Caldwell, who ordered the fabrication of this evidence? Darian hesitated, glancing at his mother. Cecilia rose, approaching the microphone with dignity intact despite the circumstances. I did. Her voice rang clear in the suddenly silent room. I allowed personal bias to cloud my judgment. The responsibility is mine alone. The headlines that followed told a story few could have anticipated. Caldwell matriarch admits to framing ex-daughter-in-law. Tech entrepreneur exonerated in foundation scandal. Billionaire family acknowledges wrongdoing in unprecedented move. Social media exploded. The hashtag #IstandWithImani transformed from a rally cry to a celebration. Former doubters issued apologies. Offers of partnership flooded Imani's inbox. Her students organized a welcome back party at the Chicago Coding Center, walls decorated with messages of support. Most significant was the joint statement issued by the Foundation's board announcing the establishment of the Redwood Initiative, a $50 million program dedicated to supporting minority entrepreneurs in tech, with Imani invited to lead its development. Justice feels different than I expected, Imani confessed to Tamsin as they watched the news coverage. I thought vindication would feel like victory. Instead, it feels like peace, Tamsin finished for her. You can finally move forward, and forward she would go, though not in the direction anyone anticipated. 2 weeks scene 2. Reconciliation. 2 weeks after the press conference, Imani stood in Golden Gate Park, watching cherry blossoms flutter to the ground like pink snow. The message from Darian had been simple: can we talk? The Japanese tea garden, 2 p.m. No pressure, just conversation. She'd debated not coming. The public vindication had cleared her name, but years of hurt couldn't be erased by a press conference. Still, something drew her here. Perhaps closure, perhaps curiosity, perhaps the part of her heart that had never fully let go. Darian was waiting on a curved wooden bridge, hands in his pockets, looking more casual than she'd seen him in years. Jeans instead of tailored slacks. A simple sweater rather than a designer suit. His eyes lit up when he spotted her, though he remained where he stood, giving her space to approach in her own time. "Thank you for coming," he said when she reached him. "I almost didn't." Honesty seemed the only possible foundation now. "I wouldn't have blamed you." He gestured to a nearby bench. "Shall we?" They sat with careful distance between them, watching koi fish glide beneath the bridge. Cherry blossoms drifted onto the water's surface, creating gentle ripples. "I owe you an apology," Darian began. "Not just for what happened at the gala, but for everything before. For letting my mother's doubts become my own. For not trusting what we had." Imani studied his profile, noting new lines at the corners of his eyes. "Why did you let her influence you so much?" He considered the question with the seriousness it deserved. "I've been asking myself that every day. The easy answer is habit. She'd guided my decisions my entire life. The honest answer is fear. Fear of what? Of being wrong about you. Of loving someone who might leave. My father left when I was 8, not physically but emotionally. Work became his world. My mother became my anchor. When she suggested you might not be who you seemed," he sighed, "it triggered old insecurities. You could have talked to me. I know that now. Pride got in the way." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not asking for another chance, Imani. I don't deserve one. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I lost, and I'm truly sorry for the pain I caused." Silence settled between them, broken only by distant laughter from children feeding ducks in the nearby pond. Finally, Imani spoke. "I'm not the same person you married. These years have changed me. I'd be disappointed if they hadn't. The Imani I knew was always evolving, always growing." A small smile touched her lips. "That part hasn't changed. Tell me about your work." "The coding centers, they're amazing." The tension eased slightly as Imani described her programs, the students she'd mentored, the communities transformed. Darian listened intently, asking thoughtful questions that revealed he'd been following her career closely. "You've accomplished more without the Caldwell name than most people do with every advantage," he observed. "That was never the point. Success for me isn't about recognition, it's about impact." "I know. That's one of the countless things I admired about you." He hesitated. "Would you consider a professional collaboration? No strings attached. The Redwood Initiative could help thousands, especially with your direct involvement." Imani considered the proposition. Working together would mean regular contact, reopening doors she'd carefully closed. Yet the potential impact was undeniable. "I'll think about it," she promised. "Send me the proposal." As they parted that day, something had shifted, not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Over the following months, professional collaboration gradually rebuilt trust. Weekly video conferences to discuss the initiative became coffee meetings. Coffee evolved into working lunches. Conversations about program metrics occasionally wandered into personal territory, cautious at first, then increasingly comfortable. Imani learned that Darian had made significant changes since their divorce. He'd moved out of his mother's sphere of influence, relocating to a modest apartment in Oakland rather than his luxury penthouse. He'd restructured the foundation's board, reducing Cecilia's power and adding diverse voices, including several of Imani's colleagues. Most surprisingly, he'd started therapy, addressing the abandonment issues stemming from his father's emotional absence and his mother's controlling presence. "I never wanted to admit I needed help," he confessed during a late dinner after a particularly successful fundraiser. "Caldwell men solve problems, they don't talk about feelings. And now I realize that was exactly the thinking that cost me everything that mattered." 6 months into their professional partnership, the lines between collaboration and reconnection began to blur. They found themselves lingering after meetings, reminiscing about shared memories, rediscovering the friendship that had been the foundation of their love. One evening, after reviewing program applications until midnight, Darian looked across the table at Imani, illuminated by the soft glow of her laptop screen. "Do you remember our first real date? The soul food restaurant in Chicago?" Imani smiled. "Miss Patricia. She embarrassed me in front of the entire place. She saw what I saw, someone extraordinary. I still see that person, Imani. Every day we work together, I'm reminded of why I fell in love with you." Her expression grew serious. "Darian, I'm not asking for anything," he assured her quickly. "I just needed to say it once. You deserve to know that someone recognizes your worth completely, without reservations or conditions." 2 weeks later, Imani surprised him by suggesting they visit their old favorite spot, a small jazz club where they'd spent countless evenings during their courtship. They slipped into a corner booth, the familiar notes of a saxophone wrapping around them like an old friend. "I've been thinking about us," Imani said during a break between songs, "about who we were then and who we are now." Darian set down his glass, giving her his full attention. "The young woman who fell in love with you was idealistic, maybe a little naive. She believed love could conquer all, even prejudice and family expectations." Imani's fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. "The woman sitting here now, the young woman who fell in love with you was idealistic, maybe a little naive. She believed love could conquer all, even prejudice and family expectations." Imani's fingers traced patterns on the tablecloth. "The woman sitting here now knows better. Love isn't enough without work, without honesty, without growth. And the man sitting here has learned that the hard way," Darian replied softly. "He knows now that love requires courage, the courage to question inherited beliefs, to admit mistakes, to be vulnerable, even when it's terrifying." Their hands found each other across the table, fingers intertwining tentatively. "I'm not saying I'm ready to dive back in," Imani clarified, "but I'm open to exploring what might be possible now between these new versions of ourselves. That's more than I deserve, and everything I could hope for." Spring returned to San Francisco, cherry trees bursting into bloom throughout the city. Imani and Darian's careful rebuilding had blossomed as well, their reconnection deepening with each shared moment. They'd created new rituals, Sunday morning hikes in the hills overlooking the bay, cooking experiments in Darian's kitchen, long drives along the coast with no destination in mind. On the anniversary of their first meeting at the tech conference, Darian suggested a walk through the Japanese tea garden, where they'd begun their reconciliation. Cherry blossoms carpeted the pathways, creating a pink-hued wonderland. "I have something for you," he said, guiding her to a secluded corner, where a young cherry tree stood apart from the others. A small plaque at its base caught her attention. "Imani's tree, and different worlds, one heart, planted in honor of second chances." Imani's breath caught. The inscription echoed their original wedding rings, the ones they'd returned to each other when everything fell apart. "I know we're still finding our way," Darian said softly, "but I wanted to mark this moment, not just our past, but the future we might build. This tree will grow as we do, taking root despite whatever storms come." He reached into his pocket, withdrawing not a ring but a simple key. "What's this?" she asked. "A house key. I bought a place in Oakland. It's nothing fancy, just a small craftsman with good bones and a yard for gardening. You mentioned wanting to grow vegetables someday." He placed the key in her palm. "I'm not asking you to move in. I'm asking if you'll help me make it a home, in whatever way feels right to you. No pressure, no timeline." Tears gathered in Imani's eyes. This wasn't the grand gesture of a billionaire, but the thoughtful offering of a man who had learned what truly mattered. "Show me this house," she said, closing her fingers around the key. They spent that afternoon exploring the modest home, Imani envisioning where bookshelves might go, Darian pointing out the perfect spot for a home office overlooking the garden. As sunset painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, they sat on the porch steps, shoulders touching. "I have something for you too," Imani said, reaching into a bag. She withdrew a small velvet pouch. Darian opened it carefully, tipping the contents into his palm. A simple platinum band gleamed against his skin, not his original wedding ring, but something new, engraved with a single word: rebuilt. "This isn't a yes to marriage," she clarified. "Not yet. It's a promise that I'm in this journey with you, that I believe in what we're building together." Under the emerging stars, Darian slipped the ring onto his finger. They sealed their new beginning with a kiss that acknowledged both their painful past and their hopeful future. Different people now, but finding their way back to one heart. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of St. Michael's Cathedral, casting jewel-toned patterns across the white marble aisle. 1 year after their reconciliation, Imani stood in the vestibule, her hands steady as Tamsin adjusted the delicate lace veil. "Never thought we'd be here again," Tamsin said, smiling as she smoothed an invisible wrinkle from Imani's gown. "Second time's the charm?" "Second time's the truth," Imani replied. Her dress was simpler than her first wedding, an elegant ivory sheath with subtle beading that caught the light as she moved. No princess ball gown this time. She'd chosen something that reflected who she'd become. Refined, confident, unafraid of standing in her own power. Outside in the sanctuary, 60 guests waited, a stark contrast to their first wedding with its 400 society attendees. This ceremony included only those who genuinely cared about them, colleagues who'd stood by Imani during the scandal, students from her programs, Darian's friends who'd helped him find his way back to what mattered. And in the front pew, sitting with perfect posture but uncharacteristic humility, Cecilia Caldwell watched the doors for her first glimpse of the bride. The organ began the processional. Tamsin squeezed Imani's hand before taking her place at the beginning of the aisle. Ready to rebuild forever? More than ready. The cathedral doors opened. Darian turned from his place at the altar, his breath catching as he saw Imani. Unlike their first wedding, where he'd stood stiffly in a designer tuxedo, today he wore a simple charcoal suit with a single white rose boutonniere. The man waiting for Imani wasn't the billionaire CEO the world knew, but simply Darian, the man who had lost everything valuable and fought to earn it back. Imani walked herself down the aisle. No father to give her away, no need for the symbolism of being transferred from one person to another. She moved with deliberate steps, her eyes never leaving Darian's. Each step represented their journey, the falling in love, the heartbreak, the growth, the forgiveness that had brought them back together. When she reached him, Darian extended his hands. The tremor in his fingers was barely perceptible, but Imani noticed. She always had. "You came back to me," he whispered. "We came back to each other," she corrected gently. The ceremony blended traditions, Imani's family's Baptist hymns alongside readings that reflected their shared values of compassion and justice. When the time came for vows, they'd chosen to write their own. Darian spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Imani, when we first stood before each other making promises, I thought I understood love. I didn't. I confused it with comfort, with familiarity, with staying within boundaries I'd been taught never to question. When challenges came, I chose the easier path rather than the right one. He squeezed her hands. I stand here today having learned that love is active. It questions, it grows, it fights for what matters. I promise to choose you every day, to listen when my instincts fail, to recognize that your strength doesn't diminish mine but magnifies it. I promise to build our future together, equally, honestly, with full awareness of the privilege and responsibility I carry. A single tear traced Imani's cheek as she began her vows. Darian, our love story isn't perfect. It's scarred, tested, broken, and rebuilt. And that makes it real. Her voice carried through the cathedral. I promise to remember that we are both works in progress, that forgiveness isn't a moment but a practice. I promise to hold us both accountable to our highest values, to never again shrink myself to make others comfortable. I promise to fight for us, but also to fight for justice beyond us. Our love isn't just for us. It's a testament to what's possible when we choose growth over comfort, truth over convenience, courage over conformity. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, their kiss wasn't the polite society peck of their first wedding. It was deep, authentic, a seal on promises made with clear eyes and whole hearts. As they turned to face their guests, Imani caught Cecilia's eye. The older woman's cheeks were wet with tears, her usual perfect composure abandoned. She gave a small nod, not approval, for Imani no longer needed that, but acknowledgement of the journey they'd all taken. The reception was held in a renovated boathouse overlooking the bay. String lights twinkled above tables where guests from different worlds mingled freely. Marcus gave a toast that had everyone laughing through tears. Tamsin's speech reminded them all of how close this second chance had come to never happening. During a quiet moment, Cecilia approached the couple. She'd aged visibly in the past year, the weight of her actions etching new lines around her eyes. "I have something for you," she said, presenting a small velvet box. "If you'll accept it." Imani opened it to find an antique sapphire pendant, clearly a family heirloom. "This belonged to my grandmother," Cecilia explained. "She was an immigrant who built everything from nothing, though I rarely spoke of that part of our history. I was always too concerned with appearing as if we'd always belonged." She looked directly at Imani. "You've taught me more than I ever taught my son, about dignity, forgiveness, and what real strength looks like. Our family legacy needed your courage more than you ever needed our name." Darian watched, arm around Imani's waist, as his wife accepted both the gift and the apology it represented. 2 years later, Imani sat in the nursery of their Oakland home, singing softly to the sleeping infant in her arms. Maya Cecilia Caldwell, named for Imani's mother, and, in an act of grace that still amazed some, Darian's mother. The baby's skin was a perfect blend of her parents', her tiny features holding hints of both their heritages. Darian appeared in the doorway, their 3-year-old son Marcus balanced on his hip. The boy had Imani's bright, curious eyes and Darian's thoughtful expression. "Someone wanted to say goodnight to his sister," Darian whispered. Marcus padded across the room in dinosaur pajamas, carefully climbing onto the ottoman beside Imani's rocking chair. He peered at his sister with the solemn concentration of a toddler bestowed with important responsibilities. "She's still very small," he observed seriously. "She'll grow," Imani assured him. "Just like you did. Will she be smart like you, Mama?" "She'll be herself," Imani replied, kissing his forehead. "That's all she needs to be." Later, with both children asleep, Imani and Darian sat on their porch swing, a ritual they'd maintained through marriage, parenthood, and the continuing growth of their professional lives. The Redwood Initiative had expanded nationally, supporting thousands of minority entrepreneurs. Darien had restructured the Caldwell Foundation, focusing its resources on educational equity and community development. "Sometimes I still can't believe this is our life," Darien said, his fingers intertwined with hers. "After everything, the hard parts made this possible," Imani replied. "We had to break before we could rebuild something stronger." Across town, in a smaller but elegant home, Cecilia had undergone her own transformation. Weekly dinners with her grandchildren had softened edges once thought permanent. She'd stepped back from society commitments to focus on personal ones, discovering joy in finger painting with Marcus and reading stories to Maya. Most surprisingly, she'd begun volunteering at one of Imani's coding centers, using her formidable organizational skills to support the next generation of innovators. The society matron, who once viewed difference as threat, now championed inclusion with the fervor of the converted. The journey hadn't been easy. Reconciliation required constant tending, like any living thing. There were still moments when old hurts resurfaced, when Cecilia slipped into judgment, when Darien had to choose consciously between ingrained responses and better ones. But with each challenge faced together, the new foundations they'd built proved stronger than the old ones. Their story, from that first meeting at a tech conference to the family they'd created, served as a powerful reminder that love wasn't about perfection but perseverance. That forgiveness didn't mean forgetting, but choosing to build something new from the broken pieces. That prejudice couldn't withstand the force of genuine connection and growth. As twilight deepened around their porch, Imani rested her head on Darien's shoulder. Their children slept peacefully inside, heirs to a legacy not just of wealth, but of moral courage. The scars of their past had become wisdom, guiding them toward a future where love triumphed over fear, understanding over judgment, truth over comfort. "The heart that can forgive," Imani had once told a group of her students, "is ultimately freer than the one that holds on to hate." Living this truth daily had transformed not just their marriage but rippled outward, changing family systems, business practices, and community relationships. The Caldwell Redwood story wasn't perfect. It was real, with all the complexity that entailed. It was proof that sometimes the deepest loves aren't those that come easily, but those fought for, lost, and reclaimed with greater awareness. If this story moved you, please subscribe to Mr. Roman's Story Vault for more tales of love, redemption, and the incredible resilience of the human spirit. Like this video if you believe in second chances, and share it with someone who might need to be reminded that it's never too late to rebuild what matters most.